It's nice to be here this morning with you all. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad that you managed to get here. Uh, if it weren't for you, I would still be in bed. Snoozing away, probably. We all live in a world, of course, and we're sort of affected by two different kinds of worlds. One is the personal world. Let's just let W mean world. And and then there's the impersonal world. I'll just call it the TV world because the TV screen brings you a world. You can turn it off and turn it on, whichever. But it gives pictures, and sounds. Maybe there's some other kind of world that you live in. I can't think of it offhand. A dream world. I never remember my dreams. We can exclude that. Dreams don't make up a world anyway. They're too discontinuous. You dream about one thing, wake up, dream about something else. So let me ask you, is there a problem with the world? Either one, whichever one you might want to focus on. Is there a problem with it? You probably suspect that I'm asking you a trick question.
You've never done that before.
Well, I know I haven't, but I'm starting now. This is the first time that I've done that. And I would say the world does not have a problem. I would only say the viewer of the world might or might not have a problem, but the world is just the world. It doesn't have a problem. You say, well, by the world, are you including just the behavior of inanimate things, or are we also including the behavior of people and animals that move around in it? I say, well, all of it, just the world, the rocks, the trees, etc. But more to the point, because we don't really have a big problem with rocks and trees. Only if, well, I have a problem with trees because there's leaves and I have to pick them up. But basically, I'm okay with them. Our main problem comes from the people that are scurrying about on the world, and the animals, and all the sounds and actions that they go through. That's the one that is the trouble. So I've just said, is this does this have a problem? And I put a question mark by it, and I would just say the answer is no. That's not where the problem lies. Of course, I'm going to say you and me. You probably already figured that out. You say, well, I don't have a problem. The world has the problem. I don't have a problem. Doesn't the course teach that we individually don't have a problem? It teaches that we're innocent. So why would it say that we have a problem? Surely the problem is with the world. Get it off of me, get it out there. But the course says both things. It says that you're innocent, but it also says you don't believe it. And that's because that's how the world picks up its problem, is you project your lack of innocence, perceived, at least that's the way you perceive it, onto the world. Let's just think of something concrete about that problem. No. And it's really not you that has the problem. The course says it is your perception. This is sort of interesting that the course does not, that it focuses on perception that way. It says, in fact, it says perception is the only thing that is off or wrong or incorrect or whatever. It's just perception. Yeah, well, that sounds a little odd. I actually thought the world had the problems, and said no. And now you said me. Well, it's not exactly me. It's my perception. Chapter 2 of the Course in Miracles, that has the title, The Innocent Perception. It says only your perception is wrong. You're blind, sort of. I mean, blind people don't have any perception, not very visual. And so you wouldn't want to exactly say that. But nevertheless, let's stretch that a little bit and go ahead and say we're blind until your perception, which is, I never know whether that is something I'm supposed to attend to or not. Imperfect or false perception needs to be changed into what I will call true or corrected perception. And then all is well. Say, really? What about, okay, I've got mine changed, but you don't have yours changed, and I'm still looking at you. It seems like that's a problem. I said, no, not if your perception is corrected. It will not be a problem for you. Now, Jesus saw this clearly, not just in the book that we study here at the Course in Miracles. He saw it in the New Testament, well, 2,000 years ago. And here's the most important statement I can think of that Jesus said about false perception. First of all, false perception is more pronounced when you're looking at your enemies than when you're looking at your friends. There's nothing false about someone smiling at you and saying, "Hi, Bob, so good to see you." On the other hand, if they've got a tomato in their hand and they're about to throw it, that's another matter, isn't it? He said, love your enemies. That's what Jesus said. That's how you change your perception. First, and the second thing that the Course says is first, refuse to have enemies. I don't care how they're acting. Just refuse. You can say, no, I don't see them as enemies. Well, you're kind of slow-witted, aren't you? They're throwing stuff at you. I see the stuff being thrown. I refuse to see them as enemies. I'm not going to see them as they are behaving. That's actually their insanity. If I see it, I join it. And then my perception is gone off the wrong, gone sour. Is that what they say?
South.
South. That's what, that's what, why they just like the South? I don't know. Anyway, gone south. That is what they never goes north. It goes south or east away. It's south. Oh, we have a history here of some sort. It's really all about perception. And that's why we say the world is not real. Now, if the world is real, it wouldn't be just about how you see it. That's just how you see it. It's the real thing. You've got to say, no, it's not the real thing. It's a perceived thing. And so if you want to deal with the problem as such, you don't deal with the world, you deal with your perception of the world. Let's make this a bigger circle here. That is what is to be focused on. If I've got to change the world and there's an enemy there, I really need to shoot him as soon as possible, or at least bury him, run him, drive him away, or whatever. Let's have a battle. Well, but if it's the perception of the world that's the problem, having a battle is not going to change anything. I'm still seeing the battle. It's just going to make it worse, really, or at least it could, whatever. So I need to change my perception of it. And that is because the world isn't real. The world is not the real thing. Your focus is off. And so it's not just your perception, it is the focus of perception that you make use of. And the Course says we need to give you innocent perception, and then you'll understand that you are innocent. As long as you are perceiving guilt or anger or such as having a true existence out there that you need to deal with and fight and change or whatever, then you're not going to be able to feel that you are perfectly okay. Well, why wouldn't you? Well, because you've got to change the world, and I'm waiting to see if you can really do a good job at changing it. You may mess up. I can't declare you as okay, perfectly okay until you accomplish that. Well, so okay, let's back up and say it's my perception of it. Couldn't we say the same thing about the perception? I'll wait until and see whether or not you can change your perception adequately. Well, I suppose you can do that, but you can refuse to do that as well. You know,
Yes.
I mentioned just a few minutes ago that refusing is a part of the deal here. You're going to refuse to see the world as the problem. And you're going to refuse to see yourself as you really are as the problem, because God created that and it's perfect. But he did not create your eyes or your nose or your ears. He didn't create that. At least that's the way the course teaches that. Uh, and by making that distinction, it can then say they're not something you have to worry about. They're just something you have to correct. And that's perception. You have to correct perception or let it be corrected for you. We don't do this alone. We do have help. So we're going to, and we're in the business of changing an imperfect or false perception into a true perception. When that is done, it will be an innocent. True perception is the same as an innocent perception. They're the same thing. So you have an opportunity every time you see idiocy, either in your personal world or your TV world. If your personal world is going okay, just flip the TV on. There's always idiocy there. You know, in fact, the only channels that aren't idiocy are the ones selling you a little ring or something, and most of them are trying to do that, sell you something, and that's the ones you skip right through because you're not interested. And then you get to the ones that are showing you a TV world of discord and people fussing at each other. Oh, that's the one I want to look at. You have just made your perception worse than it was because you've chosen to look at that which is worse. Actually, it's not. There's not a problem with looking at it. You looked at it and believed it. That's the problem. That's the problem. And the world really needs to know this because it's we have such a divisive world now. But we always have a divisive world. Even if your country is hunky dory, you've drawn a circle around it, and there's this other country over here, and you don't like the way they trade with you, and anyway, there are problems, and they're bringing diseases over. There's always a problem. We draw a circle. There's us and them. As soon as you do that, your perception is messed up. That's a divided perception. It's not seeing everybody as your brother. In fact, one of the big deals about false perception is deciding who to be mean to. You have to decide. You say you want to draw a circle here. Here are the people that are with me, and the rest of them are with somebody else. You got to divide it into at least two camps. If there are more, that's okay, two. But at least two camps, and these are the ones that say the same thing that I say, and say yes. And these are the ones that say something different and don't smile at me and try to take away what I have. But it's this division. It takes a little bit of effort, and people seem to be switching back and forth some of the time. That really confuses, you know. But you do your best to do, okay, these are my friends, these are my enemies, attack here and not attack here. And you say you do it individually, you do it with your local communities, you do it with your country, you do it. And if they're aliens, we're going to be doing it with them eventually as well, I suppose. No, we'll be afraid of them. They would be one. You know, there's one obvious thing. If aliens come to you or extra, they are advanced. You are not. That is the one clear message, because they got here. You have not got there. They're light years away. Their home world probably. That is going to be a challenge for some people, I suppose. So be it. We have lived for many years believing we're the top dog of this planet. Guess what? There are more planets that matter and that have life on them. In my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but whatever. Look at that however you like. The day may come when it's unavoidable to disagree. If there are ships in the sky everywhere, it's unavoidable. Someone's arguing with it. No, they're not here. Look up. What do you think that thing is? So anyway, that's just one of my pet peeves recently, because there are now more and more and more UFO stuff on television. I mean, the government's releasing this stuff. It used to keep it secret. They're releasing it, and you know, a lot of it's very convincing. Well, it's convincing enough that the government had to classify it as top secret and hide from you. That tells you either they're total idiots. They don't hide cans of tomato juice from you. Doesn't classify that. Was somebody pointing at somebody?
Oh yeah, Tamara put a little laughing emoji with tears when you did the whole lookup thing. I
Ow.
pointed at that. That was funny to me.
What'd she say?
She put a little it's a little emoji, a little picture
Yeah.
of a smiley face that was laughing with tears coming down whenever you did the look up.
Oh,
She was yeah, it was funny.
help from the audience behind. You
There
know,
you go.
I never.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's funny.
thanks for mentioning. Oh, that's what you were pointing. I didn't know who you were pointing at, and that was okay.
I
Pat.
think what amazes me now, talking about perception, and I'm sitting here with a jacket on that has stars and stripes and has, see all that. And I get comments on it now about, you know, as if I'm making a political statement, or I'm doing
Right.
something apparently because they want to talk about it. And the humor of the code is that I got caught in Nashville back around 9/11. After that had happened, I was working an outside show and it rained and blew in on us. And I got wet. Went to the Cracker Barrel for lunch and bought the coat. You know, all I was wanting was to get warm. And for people to make comments here, so I was 20 years later, it amazes me. You know, I forget I have it on because it's one of those things I just throw in the car and wait, you know, when I need it. But
I assume they weren't all compliments, like, oh, how wonderful that you're a patriotic person.
yeah, they just comment now, which I find that's odd,
Yeah.
especially if I don't know you. Now I'm going to the grocery store or at the dump throwing the crap in, but the perception that I'm doing something other than wearing a jacket that I bought one day at a Cracker Barrel.
That you're making a certain statement.
Right, yeah, I, you know, have
People
nothing
must
else.
go around with a mindset of, well, I know that other people are going to be trying to change me and make me think like they do. And if you have an innocent perception, first of all, you're not interested in changing anybody. And there's no need to do that. You can't do it anyway. Not really. So just don't make the effort. Let others be others to whatever extent they want to be without judging them about it. The main perception, main problem with imperfect or false perception is that it is based on a judgment of some sort or other. Why you bought your coat? What are you trying to say? And judgments can go positive or negative. Of course, we don't have any problem with positive judgments. It's the negative ones. And the Course says that's because there are two voices in your mind. This is a really profound teaching of the Course, in my opinion. It's not that there's a God above and a devil beneath, and you got to look up or look down, and it's in your mind. It's not up there or down there. It's in your mind, and your mind has a real problem, and it's called the ego. And it is the one that believes you're separate, and it is the one that believes all these other people are trying to put you down or somehow do something bad to you by wearing the wrong kind of clothes. It will bring those thoughts to you without your permission or encouragement. It just does it. It's like we got a little sick bug in our mind, and it's saying things all the time that are negative. It is your responsibility to not listen to it. That's your and to the extent that you do that, your perception will become corrected perception, because there's only one other voice in your mind, and that's the Holy Spirit. Some people find it unusual when they, first come into contact with the Course, maybe, or maybe at other times, unusual to have the idea that the Holy Spirit or anything of God could be in their mind. The Course makes this real clear. It says there is something else in your mind. It's called the ego. But if you put that out, if this is the ego, if you you shove it out and it's not there, there's only one thing left, and that's the Spirit of God. That's pretty strong statement. You don't have to go seeking the Spirit of God and influencing it with promises of good behavior from now on or whatever to come to your mind. It lives there all the time when the ego's not in the way. You might want to think of it as being there, but the ego is always standing in front of it, chattering. So you put the ego aside. What's left is the Spirit of God. We call that the Holy Spirit because it speaks for God at all times. It knows how to do that. Your mind is a receptive vehicle. Thoughts appearing. As your memory goes, less and less thoughts that you want appear at the right time. What was his name? Where did I put that tool? Whatever you're forgetting. But they just are there or they're not there. And the only two kinds of thoughts that can be there are those that come from the ego and those that are of God. Thank goodness that I'm so glad there aren't 15 different sources of thought in my mind. I just give up. I can't count to 15 anymore. To identify. It's just two. I can do two. I got that. I still have that. 1, 2. I've got that. So if it's not one, it's the other. Thank God for simplicity. That is not. I'm metaphorically thanking God. God didn't put the ego there, but no matter. My logical mind says, thank you, whoever. It's just two. You don't have 10 egos. You just have one. You don't have 10 voices of God. The voice of God always is perfectly consistent, so it's not divided and saying different things. The voice of the ego is for separation. The voice of God is for joining and unity. Now, if the world is real, this whole idea breaks down because you would then have the voice of the ego, the voice of God, and then your perceptions of the real world. That'd be sort of like a third. That's what I see. In other words, most people, even if they sort of think this way, will actually make the mind contain something like the ego. People would say the devil made me do it if you were believing in a devil, but the devil really didn't do it. It's just your ego. Don't blow it up into something bigger than it is. It's not necessary. It's bad enough as it is. So there's the ego in your mind. And then I'm just going to say HS for Holy Spirit because it's short. Holy Spirit in your mind. And then they would and then there's me, my voice. No, you don't have a voice. You don't get to have a voice. So this is not correct. That's my assertion. It's what the Course teaches. And it's a useful assertion. Even if it's wrong, it's kind of useful. I don't see it as wrong. But if it's wrong, it's just useless. But it is, in my opinion, and in the Course's teaching, a correct statement to say that there are only these two voices. And I just want to put a bunch of checks by that. That is such an important thing. And your ego is always wrong, not occasionally, but always. It doesn't like you. It doesn't think you're worth anything. And every time somebody wears a coat that says the wrong thing, if they see, he doesn't like you either. He thinks you're bad. Look at his coat. Can't you see it? Or her coat, as Pam is the one that mentioned that. And so what you do is you learn to recognize. It's not too hard to learn to recognize what the ego is like. If it's negative, it's from the ego. You just learn to, as soon as you become aware of it, you take your attention elsewhere. It's that simple and that hard. As you practice this, it does get easier, I might say. But so you need to be aware at all times about the source. Not just occasionally, not just in the morning, so you can give them hell in the afternoon. I'm nice in the morning, but by afternoon, better ignore me, get away from it. That's not sufficient. We really do have a rather grand goal in mind. We're going to the realm of light and truth. you've got to be ready to accept it. And you can't get there and say, I can bring my ego, can't I? No, I'm sorry, you can't. Well, somebody will cut it off for me. That's the big deception here about, I think, throughout religion, is that God is going to come and extricate from you the whatever is improper or out of balance or whatever you are just wrong. Pull it out of you as you scream, no, no, I want it. He doesn't do that. God does not attack. If you want to believe idiotic stuff, he just steps back and say, you have free will. I am not going to interfere with or contort or replace your will with a higher one. That's your job. You see, most people feel, or at least when I grew up, when I was a young guy and was growing up, I had the idea that, well, I'm however I am now, but when I get to heaven, I'll be perfect because God will see to it. He's got this great big stamp that says perfect now, but bam, perfect. And then all the imperfect stuff is knocked out. He hits it hard enough so the bad thoughts get knocked out. There's no attack in heaven. God only loves. God can't attack you. He just doesn't do that. He just loves. You have got to see to it and say, oh, Lord, that is too big a problem. You better get on it then. If you think it's too big, it really isn't too big because God does help. This is not just the good voice in your mind. It's God's voice. There is a difference here. God has resources that you don't have, see. And that's why the Course in Miracles is named in that way. It means that when you begin attuning to this voice, miracles come to help. If you ask for them. You see, the big problem that we all have is that we reject God and his presence and his ways, replace our own by his instead of his, and then assume that he'll knock us senseless at the doorway to heaven and take those out and put his in, just by force. What do they call it when an enemy country is captures someone and they teach them to say just what the other country wants them to hear? It's brainwash. They call brainwashing. Forget the term, but there's going to be no heavenly brainwashing. God does not wash your brain out. You know, it just doesn't do that, and it's done here. He will help you do that. And the brainwashing, the washing part, is just getting the dirt out. That's why I know what washing is about. Is you get the dirt out. Well, there's the dirt right there. And you can't actually get the ego out in a literal sense. You just stop listening to it. The really wonderful thing about believing in an ego compared to believing in the devil, for example, the devil would be regarded as an external source of power. You know, like KUB, the Knoxville Utility Board, that's an external source of power, and it gives us electricity through the outlets. We don't have to use all our own generators. You can go buy generators and start and not subscribe to the electrical power plant. But most people don't want to do that. Of course, it's really convenient to have outlets. Well, the devil would be something that would be like the ego, except it's not. The devil's not specific to you. There's just one devil. There are many egos. They all act the same way, but you got one, I got one, and none of them are real. But no matter, we are used to believing the ego. We're used to attacking other people. We're used to thinking that they are just waiting to attack us and trying to find some way to do so. All that's junk. It is not true. It's simply what you're choosing to believe. And so just take your attention when you see it or perceive it. You see, we really are talking about internal perception as well as external. So this is the internal part of perception. Perceive who is speaking in your mind. You're just the listener, kind of like, and you decide to go with one voice or another. Perceive what voice is in your mind. If it's in the dirty mind, if it's in the voice of the ego, which I just said was like dirt. You need to wash it out. But you don't really wash it like you wash clothes. It's just a matter, if there's a pointer in your mind, take it and it's pointing at whatever, it's listening to the ego. You just point it over and so it can listen to the Holy Spirit. Move your attention. And you can call that choosing again, if you wish, because anytime you're listening to you are choosing to listen to it. Your choices are not violated here in your mind. The choices you make in terms of what you want to think, it truly is your choice. I believe that. I'm sure you do too. But there's an internal division in it, and it is your job. God can't do this for you. He can help you with it, but he cannot make your decision to listen to him instead of the ego for you. That's what called a dictator. I mean, the boss who doesn't let you think otherwise, that's called a dictator. Well, God's not a dictator. He simply lets you make that choice. Now, once you make your choice for him, then he will give you energy. He will give you miracles as you ask for them, to the extent that you're open for them, really. And they will come. And I think that the idea behind the Course of Miracles is that miracles are really necessary. The world is too darn hard without them. It is a hard world without miracles. You never know who's going to hit you in the face next. First thing to do is get rid of the idea that anybody has ever hit you in the face. But that's because you are making your decisions, and then whatever happens to you is a reflection of whatever kind of decisions you've made. But you don't have to go there just right now. All you have to do is decide, I'm going to make my pointer go over here to spirit. And anytime I sense a thought of division, attack, of sadness, or anger, or fear, in any of them, just put them, let's just call them all fear of some sort or other. You don't want to give it, any of that, your energy. If you do, you're making it real in your mind. You're going to think of the world now as a real place. It's not just about how you perceive it. It's a real thing, and you don't have a chance against it, except occasionally. Every once in a while you get to smile, but not real often. Well, you can smile at somebody else's discomfort, but I mean a smile that actually is an indication of real happiness. You don't get to do that too often if the world is real, because it saves so many other negative and divisive things. Oh, and the other thing is, they're saying so many divisive things, and you really get caught up in how negative they are. You see? If you're not into this, washing the ego out of your mind, as I was saying, you'll be just simply pulled into it more. And a good sign of that is your attempt to decide how bad the bad person is. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, whatever. Outrageous, outlandish, oh shooty. It's just, it's amazing to me how quickly so many people go to shooting. They might not necessarily mean they're going to go get a pistol and shoot you, but they mean that if they do, they don't care. If somebody else does it, you get there real quick. It's real easy. That's because they're used to listening to the ego. The platform for it is already there, and they're not trying to dismantle it. And you can get to shooting real easy. You don't want to ever get to shooting, whether it's with a real bullet or a verbal one. It doesn't matter. Attack is not necessary in this world at all. Now, I have a friend who carries a pistol in his pocket right there. I'll show you my pistol. Oh, well, I tried to attack you, but I should have done it a little bit harder, but that's my pen coming apart.
Yeah.
So my pistols don't work too good, but he's got one that actually is made of metal. Thank you. There you go. I had a little spear. I just didn't realize it. That was
a miracle.
A spear
It's a
gun.
good visual. Yeah.
Yeah, a visual, right? A visual miracle. Well, in the world, things fall apart.
That's true.
And you don't have to see them as disasters, I might add. It's not necessary. It's all your perception. The whole freaking thing is your perception. And if there are miracles, now, if there are no miracles and there's no help, you can't say that. If a herd of elephants coming at me and I'm saying, oh, it's all perception. There's no help over here, but it's just all, I'm just going to say those elephants are wonderful, and then boom, you're just laid out as so much spaghetti on the floor. That's not a solution. No one wants to go there. If you do, the elephants in Africa, please, take the next plane. The solution is always that you ask for the miracle and the elephant herds part and go around you. Or a helicopter comes and picks you up. I don't care how. But you don't have to suffer or be punished in this world unless your perception believes you do. And so you don't use your perception to make the world, which has all kinds of possibilities for disaster. I mean, they're everywhere. There's nothing that can't fall on you and hurt you. Well, feathers, okay, they don't hurt. Well, if you had enough of them, they'd choke you to death, But
If they had an ostrich inside them, that would hurt.
yeah, there you go. Almost anything you look at could be used against you. Somebody could pick it up and throw it at you if it's an object. If it's words, they could twist them and make you look bad. None of that counts or means diddly squat, and you are in charge of your perception. You decide what you believe. Now, one other thing about this, when someone is saying something, or when you're seeing a thundering herd come at you, there's an energy associated with those things. It's like it's not just a verbal thing. If someone attacks you and calls you a bad name, yeah, they call you a Chinaman. Well, no, I'm not from China. And if I was, it'd be fine anyway. What's wrong with Chinaman? There's an energy. You must block that energy. You must not allow it to enter your mind. It is not true. And so if someone says, Bob, I don't like the color of your hair. Well, I could dye it for you, but I'm not going to. You don't have to accept the energy. It maybe there are better colors of hair. Who gives a flip about it, really? But I don't have to accept that energy. I can say, well, I'm fine with my color of hair. And I'm fine with your color of hair too, for that matter. I'm not going to judge anything, something about your hair. If I'm going to judge you, I'll judge the whole being. But I'm not going to judge anything about you or your being. I'm not capable of that. I'm not capable of being an adequate judge of anything about you. I just don't know nothing. And furthermore, I don't want to try to do that because it is not required. Judgment keeps the world real. The release of judgment lets the world begin to evaporate. Both what about personal world? I don't want it to evaporate. The TV, yeah, I could have that evaporation. I can handle that. But personal world, what you want your personal world to do is you want to become loving and peaceful, rather than having discord all the time. And the same general idea applies there, except with maybe greater strength, that when your people in your personal world attack you, don't accept those attacks as real. They don't know what they're doing. If they're attacking you, they're not saying the truth. It's the same as if they were walking in a room with all the lights turned out at night. And what would be the results? They bump into stuff and get mad. Well, of course, they don't see. You remember Jesus saying, I guess from the cross, wasn't it? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. That's always the case. You see people, whether it's on TV or in your personal side, you see them going crazy, saying ridiculous. They know not, they truly know not what they do. There's no need for you to attack them, and it doesn't do any good. You're just joining their ranks. They're the attackers and the ones that don't attack. The attackers do not know what they're doing. If you're not attacking, then there's a glimpse of truth in your mind, obviously, and you're working from here. and you do not have to be harmed by their negative thoughts. Here, there's two quotes that I really like to bring to people's attention, and I know that I'm going to call my two favorite quotes so you'll know what I'm talking about when I say them. And yeah, I have said this before. You do not have to be under the world's laws of violence and death. The Course says that. You can, and there's an affirmation that goes with it. I'm under only the laws of
No
God.
laws but God's.
Nothing, what is it?
I'm under no laws but God.
I'm under no, thank you. I knew I wasn't quite getting it right. I think it's a lesson in the workbook. I'm under no laws but God's. Try to remember that. Say, well, how can I know if that really applies to me? There is a way to know. The Course tells you. Forget not that the only purpose of the world is the healing of God's Son. And that means his mind. That means perception, which occurs in the mind. That's the only purpose. It says, as long as you think it is something else, you will be under the laws of the world, the laws of violence and death of the world. But you can stop doing that. As long as you think that, you're simply not under their laws. They can't touch you. Now you say, well, I think the world is for the healing of God's Son. Sure, but it's also to have a good time in, isn't it? No. I don't care if you have a good time. I don't mind. Of course, what have I got to do with it anyhow? But it doesn't hurt anything. But that's not its purpose. If you happen to enjoy the sunset, well, great. But if it heals your mind, that's much greater, you might say. That matters. The purpose is the healing of your mind. Most people don't. For most people, the purpose of the world is to play games. I think that's pretty much accurate. Can you think of another one? Maybe I may not include everything. All the people that you know in the world, either personally or on the TV, or they're playing games. How to be bigger or better or more powerful or smarter than somebody else. I'm going to beat you at Monopoly. Watch me play Monopoly, or watch me play Mumbly Peg, whatever that is. Isn't that a game? Mumbly Peg? Is there such a?
Yes.
These words that come into our mind, we think, well, where did that come from? I think of somebody throwing a knife at.
That's what
it is.
Is that what it is? At a board with squares on it or something. So I don't know what mumbly's got to do with
I think
it.
it was
At any rate.
I think it was an 18th century game.
Oh, really?
Um,
Well, if you
don't
think
see
that,
mumbly
I
peg.
don't have any thought about it, so I'll accept yours and go. I don't have no idea. 18th century sounds fine to me.
I did mumble back then.
I think that's what people do. Have you noticed it? Think of something of a person doing something other that's directed at the world rather than that's not directed to heal the mind. Think of something they do that's not playing a game. Now, they don't think they're playing a game. They think it's dead serious that they get to be elected to this position or that position, or win this war or that war, or this argument or that argument. Okay, an argument. What game are you playing? You're trying to show that you're smarter than the other person. You're playing the game of special. What we call that, the game of specialists. I'm more special than you. I'm going to prove it by winning an argument here. And I call that playing a game. And the reason I call that playing a game is because God created you perfect. God didn't create you pretty good. Now, if he created you pretty good, we could have a game going here. I'm pretty good, but you're a little bit better, pretty good, or, you know, you could compete, you see. If you're perfect, there's no changing. You can't get more perfect. Perfect is perfect, period. That does not apply to your body or your behavior or your personality. It applies to your essence, your spirit, your soul. It is perfect. And you say, well, can't it be stained? No, it cannot. It cannot be stained. Your soul, the negativity of the ego is like water on a duck's back. It just goes off. but your mind can hold on to it. That's why our mind needs healing. We're here teaching our mind to not hold on to it and to let that go, to release it. And that's the way we correct perception. You need to be doing that every single day if you want to be happier. If you don't want to be happier, no problem. The world will oblige very easily. Thank you.
Thank you.